He killed the first sage grouse he ever saw, 5.5 pounds from completely out of sight. We couldn't see him. And he cut him out of the air, blew a hole in him the size of a silver dollar. And you can't teach a bird to do that. They just got to want to do it.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back for another episode of the Falconry Told podcast, brought to you in part by the fine folks at Marshall Radio Telemetry, the makers of the most carefully engineered and reliable tracking systems available. For more information on Marshall Radio's fine products, including their awesome GPS system, head to marshallradio.com. And also in part by the Falconry Fund, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting and protecting the various arts and practices of falconry and the cultural and environmental assets that make it possible. For more information on the Falconry Fund and its projects, and also to donate, just head to falconryfund.org. And this episode is the 4th episode in the New Mexico Falconers Association podcast series. It features Madison Haley, who has been a falconer for roughly 50 years or so. So he had a lot of very cool stories to share, as well as kind of some insight on the different changes in the landscape and hawking in the state of New Mexico, particularly when it comes to ducks, prairie chickens, and things of that nature. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn things over to the conversation with Madison, so you can hear some of the great stories that he had to share with me, and hope you enjoy it. Here we go. You said you lived in Idaho previously, correct?
Yes, briefly in the early 80s, I was trying to go to college and become an art teacher, and had a peregrine, and went one semester, and then the lady I was with, we found out that we were going to be parents, and so there I was with no job and knee-deep snow, and decided to flee back to New Mexico. But I had really enjoyed Idaho, and a lot of game, and met some characters there. Probably could have maybe arranged to stay there more permanent, but under the circumstances, and I was 22 years old, and gonna be a dad, and no job, no skills. So I fled back to New Mexico after one semester of school. But I hawked partridge and ducks, and I met some other guys, and saw some country I'd never seen before, and it was quite an experience.
Wow. Yeah, I can kind of relate. I was 23, 24 whenever I found out I was going to be a dad too. So it's I'd already kind of started the career. I don't think it's any less scary though. So I can understand, the
yep.
It's definitely a life-changing thing. But so you were originally from New Mexico and then went to Idaho for school then?
Right.
Okay.
I was born in Albuquerque in 1949, and probably started getting interested in falconry in about 1962, 1963, I believe. In fact, I'm certain I saw a Walt Disney program, and they had this guy, it was just a short little 5-minute feature, maybe 10 minutes, on one of his shows, and had a guy in a buckskin shirt, and he had a little prairie falcon on a creance, and he flew it to a lure and picked it up, and I heard the bells jingling, and he put a hood on it, and it really affected me. I go, I want to do that. The next day I had the encyclopedias looking up falconry, and it just got in my brain. In fact, I think the next couple of nights I got my dad's flashlight and went out around the trees where we lived. We lived on the outskirts of Albuquerque. I took my dad's big powerful flashlight and was searching the trees, because I was convinced there was a falcon in the trees around our house. I got to find one.
Yeah.
So anyway, and I was probably in the 7th grade, junior high school, and kind of any chance I got to get a book. And at the time, the only thing that was available to us were the old English falconry books, and they're not much help, but I probably thumbed through it hundreds of times, looking at the pictures and reading them, and that was kind of the start for me.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Everybody's got a different story. Everybody's got a different age, it seems, and it's it really is amazing, just in the conversations that I've had with people over the past couple years doing these, just how different everybody's experiences are. And even just doing one recently with a falconer from the UK, learning just how different things are, even from country to country, is amazing too. So, but so you started off. What did you think that you wanted to do, and how did that end up? I don't know, kind of. You said you wanted to initially go to school for what again?
I wanted to be an art teacher.
Yeah, an art teacher. Okay.
Fine arts and education.
Gotcha. So I know we were talking a little bit ago also about, kind of when you're on that path a little bit, you kind of stumbling into that other situation with the peregrine that kind of changed your life and kind of steered you in that direction. Go into that just a little bit.
Oh, okay. I was probably, in that same time frame, I was probably 13, 14 years old. I'm going to say 14. Mm-hmm. And a fellow I knew that lived a couple of miles away, a few years older than me, named Jim Wilmarth, ended up being my best friend I ever had. I ran into him at a little shopping center out in the rural area of Albuquerque, and he was taking his little brother to get a haircut. And I saw him, and, "Hey, Jim." He goes, "Hey, Madison. And what do you, this and that, a little chit-chat." And he says, "Well, I got a peregrine." And I really set me back on my heels, because I only thought there were peregrines in England. That was my scope of knowledge at the time. And at any rate, about 2 hours later, I found myself riding my bicycle a couple of miles over to where he lived, still with his parents. Jim was about 18 or 19 at the time, and I was 14, maybe approaching 15 years old. And I'd had a sparrowhawk and kind of blundered around. But I walked into the back porch, screened-in porch of their home, and here is this gorgeous, fully feathered, eyes female anatom peregrine on a screen perch, just dog tame, positively breathtaking gorgeous. And I walked up within 4 or 5 feet of her, and she just cocked her head and looked me over head to toe, and I just almost had an out-of-body experience. It just kind of, I just knew that I was going to do that someday, that I was going to own a peregrine, mm-hmm. that it can happen. There's one right in front of me. I know it can be done. I've seen him in the books, and I want one. But, it was quite a while before I got one.
Well, what were you flying in the interim then? Was it mainly just hawks?
I just fooled around, had some sparrowhawks. I got a hold of a young red tail and had it 2 years. So nothing was serious, no hawking. It's pretty much just having them on, just having them and feeding them and trying to take the best care I could of them. When I was 17 years old, my senior year in high school, in November, during Thanksgiving break, I went and trapped a tercel prairie. And I manned the bird. I had no hood for it. I manned him pretty well. Had him on a little screen perch in a shed at the back of our property. And would come home from school every day and walk in, and he'd hop to my fist, and I'd carry him around. And it never really got beyond. I think I got to call him to the lure. And one day I came home from school, and I usually would walk up to the door, and I would start tapping the walls of this little building. I could hear him move in there. Anyway, I didn't hear anything, and I opened the door, and he was hanging upside down, backwards on the screen perch, dead. And it absolutely broke my heart. I remember when I buried him, later on I climbed up in a tree and hid and cried for a while. It just absolutely devastated me. And it all goes back to my just lack of experience. It was kind of bound to happen. And, quite honestly, I didn't know any better. So then it was a couple of years before I got another trapped another prairie falcon. I took her a little bit further, and to the point of waiting on and throwing some pigeons. And another friend of mine, I think the same day, we both trapped our birds the same day, and more or less trained them together. It didn't fly them together in a cast, but he'd go fly his, and I'd wait till he got through, then I'd fly mine. And never got to hawking. I never could break through. I never had a mentor to say, well, you should have done this, or here's the fork in the road you take to go do this. My falconry at that time was pure trial and error, mostly error.
Well, I mean, nobody learns from getting everything right. Yeah,
exactly.
Unfortunately,
yeah. It's the price you pay.
Yeah, but so you didn't have an official sponsor when you started out. I mean, it was back still.
No licensing.
Before the regs
birds,
and all that stuff.
The birds weren't protected. If you wanted to go shoot a peregrine and nail it up on your barn door, you could. I believe it was 1970, before the state of New Mexico required you to have a license, and then of course their protection of the birds was engaged, and it was 1971 that I went and got my first peregrine, a tundra peregrine. I was 22 years old, and actually it was it's 50 years ago, and I did pretty well with that bird. I flew her 9 seasons without telemetry. I killed several hundred ducks with her, killed crows, pheasant, killed a couple of herons. What else? I can't remember. But anyway, I flew her 9 seasons, and really, here's you like stories. Here's a story. The first part of the year, the first part of the first year I had her, I kind of stumbled around. I was too scared of losing her to get aggressive and let her fly. And I finally got around another falconer that kind of steered me in another direction and got me thinking about some other things. And so finally, about the middle to the latter part of the season, she really started to fly. She learned how to thermal, and that changed everything, because the bird was no longer just skimming around on the ground. She was going up 800, 900, 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet, and I was throwing pigeons, and I could see the whole dynamic now. I understood it, and I was doing it. And I went out west of Albuquerque to this valley, and there's a few ponds out there, and went out late one morning and checked a pond. There was 6 or 8 green-winged teal on it, and had the typical dike, half kind of a crescent shape, half moon shape dike, and got the bird out. She went up 700 or 800 feet, went and flushed the teal, and teal are notorious for being bad flushers, but by some miracle they just went out the end of the pond, out over the hard dirt. She came in and drilled one, pitched up, and fluttered down on this duck, and I had killed my first head of game. And while I was running to her, for some reason, I just felt compelled that I needed to jump up in the air and do a somersault. And I landed on the small of my back on rock hard ground. Didn't faze me, and I got up and went the remaining 20, 30 yards to where the falcon, had dispatched the duck and had started to pluck it. And that was the first kill of my career, and that was 50 years ago.
I think we all have a little, I don't know, you want to call a make-in mishap story to some degree. I mean, how many times since then can you remember you've tripped and fell, or just splatted, trying to get in? Okay,
another time at a stock tank, I was going down this little embankment. There was this enormous puddle of cow manure. I mean, it was the consistency of oatmeal. And I slipped. I skidded out in it, and my whole side and my whole hawking bag was coated in liquid cow manure.
Oh.
So that was real fun to drive home and clean up afterwards.
Jeez. Yeah, no, I probably would have just left it all there and just bought new stuff the following day. That's pretty disturbing. I don't think I could have gotten around that personally, but
It's pretty unforgettable.
it sounds like it. Well, so when we were talking earlier in there also, you had mentioned that at one point in time, I think it was whenever you said you were in Idaho, you were actually one of only a couple of people at that time that even had a peregrine at that point, right?
Right. When I got there, and there was some other guys around town there that were flying prairies, and another fellow, he was real good with goshawks and always had a really hot goshawk. And let me see, yeah, it was mostly prairies, but I had my old Tundra Falcon, and she was on a permit. And the only other peregrine at the time in the state of Idaho, Lester Boyd had a peregrine. So there were, believe it or not, only 2 legal peregrines in the state of Idaho back in the early 80s when I was there. And now, I'll probably mispronounce the name, but is it Malad, Idaho?
Yeah,
Malad?
Malad, yeah.
There's got to be 8 or 10 falconers alone living there that have several falcons in just one little community. Seems to be kind of a mecca for falconers. And anyway, the World Center Birds of Prey is there, the archives, the Idaho is now a falconer's destination, but at one time there were 2 peregrines in the state legally owned by falconers. It's unbelievable.
It's kind of interesting how over the last several years in particular that the popularity of it's kind of had this resurgence. And yeah, I mean, and with regs changing and hunting laws changing and new things being instituted, and of course with the constant loss of land, you know, the difference in, I don't know, just the quote unquote, I guess the hot spots are kind of, it's kind of interesting to see how all those dynamics are changing some too, you know, but, what made you move back to New Mexico then, aside from just being broke and young and jobless? Was there anything in particular that made you come back?
Well, it's my home base where my family was. I knew I could get employment, and we knew we were going to have a child in the spring, and you know, it's just a way to regroup. And I was comfortable here, and there was adequate hawking. The whole east side of our state, probably from Raton all the way down to Carlsbad, New Mexico, had ponds. And I lived in Roswell, New Mexico. And Roswell is an agricultural area, and it had, I counted 70 ponds that I could fly. And these were they were man-made. They'd push up 4 sides of dirt and create a square tank. And they had 3-phase electric pumps that filled them with water. And the temperature there in the winter is mild. So there was a gazillion ducks there all winter. And so I knew I had a fallback, that my falconry wasn't over because I could no longer live in Idaho. I just made the adjustments I needed to make to survive.
Cool. And what did you end up doing whenever you got back here, like job-wise then?
Oh, job-wise? I started, I was lucky enough to stumble into some great people that owned a real estate development and building company. They were home builders. And I started off with them just as a carpenter, laborer, more or less. And they taught me a trade. I made a living, and that was probably 45 years ago. And I'm now I've been a licensed general contractor, builder for 35 or 40 years. But anyway, yeah, I was ran a nail gun and stood up trusses and nailed plywood, and was a builder. But here's I guess you could call it a story. I moved back down to Roswell from Albuquerque, only 3 hours from Albuquerque, for the duck hawking, It was fabulous duck hawking. And, of course, with the daylight savings time change, in the afternoons come late October, November, you get off work at 4:30, it's dark. I couldn't go home. So I remember one day I went and asked the owner of the company. He's the one that hired me. And I said, Don, I've moved down here because I do the sport of falconry. I think you know that. And now with the time change, I can't get off work and get the falcon and go out and hunt before it gets totally dark. And is there any way that I could keep my job but maybe get off at 3 o'clock every day? And he paused a second and he said, yeah, we can do that under one condition. And I kind of blinked and I kind of waited, and he says, and you take me and my son out and fly your falcon for us. And I think a week later we did. And for the next 2 years that I worked for him, before I broke away and went off on my own, I got to pick up my tools and leave at 3 o'clock, dash across the small town, grab up the falcon, and there were ponds anywhere from 10 minutes away to 30 minutes away. I had no problem. Probably killed a duck every single evening of the winter.
That's cool. Like I said, I'd wondered with that kind of schedule and, just what, with the adaptation of you having to find a career like that, exactly how that was going to, affect your falconry. That's one question I like to ask a lot because, everybody has different, schedules, different. Some guys can mainly only do it on weekends. Some guys are fortunate enough to work from home, do their own thing, and still just kind of do whatever they want when they want and still have a career. Others aren't so fortunate, so right. I kind of wondered if you were able to still make that work.
I did. It was quite a system. I mean, I had the hawking bag ready, and I had the bird blocked out in this little fenced side yard, and I can remember pulling my truck into the driveway of this little house we rented. I rented a house for $80 a month, a 2-bedroom house. I think gas at the time was 35 cents a gallon.
Oh, man.
A long time ago. But I could look through the slats in the fence when I rolled in the truck in the driveway, and I could see my bird pumping her wings. She knew I was home and knew the routine, the timing. And animals can get on this timing schedule like to the minute, to the second. And I'd watch her, and I'm still in the truck, and I would shut the engine off, and she's still pumping. But when I would open the door of the truck, I could see her bait off the block, and she did it every single day. Wow! Just such a routine, and just so much repetition. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how you train animals. It's repetition, and she just got so used to it. But I would look for it every day of her paddling her wings. I'd turn off the truck, and when I would open the door, she'd bait.
As far as you said, you lived in Roswell. Was this still, so? This was still around Roswell then?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What's the landscape changed? How's that changed? I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons why I was excited to do, a series of podcasts with, falconers from a specific state in succession, because I kind of wanted to see what things were going to be like, or let me rephrase that. I kind of wanted to see how things had changed, from, if it had been as drastic as it's been in other states, which is the loss of landscape, hunting spots. And I mean, how much has that changed for you, like all these years?
It was a very, very drastic change, and it changed the whole dynamic of my falconry. What they did, two things happened. First of all, I discovered grouse hawking. And the second thing that happened was the ponds in Roswell that I mentioned earlier were all 4-sided raised dike, and they were fed by a pump. And they did away with those. They just bulldozed them away, and the purpose of those ponds was to push water down these small concrete irrigation ditches. It would allow the water to travel out to irrigate their alfalfa fields or whatever, and they also use the water for their livestock, of course. But they bulldozed probably 90+% of all the ponds and put center pivot irrigation, so no more ponds. There's still some ponds there, and there's still ducks there, but the ponds have overhead power lines. They have hog fence in front. They're posted. They're right on a road. The good ponds are history. They're gone, and that really changed. While I lived in Roswell, I traveled about 70 miles due east toward the Texas border, and I discovered a population of lesser prairie chickens, and that changed everything because, ducks were phasing out, and I saw how challenging the prairie chickens were, and I got grouse fever. I think a lot of falconers understand that, and that changed my point of view. It changed the type of birds I flew. When captive breeding came about and was so successful, and the peregrine was saved and reintroduced, and it was just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, a byproduct of it was captive bred falcons for falconers. After a while, it loosened up, and then private breeders could breed these birds and sell them to us. And I got first of all, I got a Peel's Tiercel, and he was really something. He killed the first prairie chicken in New Mexico ever killed by a trained falcon. And I don't want to sound arrogant, but his first season down in Roswell, when I still was on the ducks and the ponds were still there, some people are going to call me a liar, but he killed 122 ducks his first winter. He Peel's Tiercel, 22 ounces. Then I would go to Oklahoma to fly the greater prairie chickens, and that was a hard deal because it seems like on a grouse trip, there's a day that a wild prairie will come in and pull your bird out of the sky. There will be a day that the wind is 60 miles an hour. There will be a day that you don't find the grouse. So at the time, I was still an hourly carpenter, and I could steal off a week. And in those 5 days, I had to really, accomplish something, find the birds. And at the time, first time I went grouse hawking was with the tundra peregrine. She was a duck hawk, and the prairie chickens made her look foolish. I think she dinked one in 2 trips. When they dip form, thinking they're ducks, and those grouse hit the afterburner, it's over. They don't have a chance. But then later on, years later, the hybridization in breeding started, and that again changed everything. And those were the birds that are the perfect match for prairie grouse.
Cool. I mean, so have those numbers been even remotely sustainable, even like to current day? I mean, is there still enough of those to be able to successfully hunt, long wings in your area? Or?
The lesser prairie chicken in New Mexico has been closed for, I'm going to say 25 or more years.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, there's just little pockets of them around, and there's other people that are more expertise on the exact cause of it, but there's just remnant populations. There's somewhere over in this county's, got 100, and over here there's a few scattered around. So I switched, and I started going to Nebraska, where they have sharp-tailed grouse and the greater prairie chicken, and they're plentiful up there. I have seen in the good times, when they really group up in November, December, January, I have seen 500 and 600 grouse in one evening swarming the farmland. And down the road here, saw 150 come into a cornfield, then I dashed down the road and turned back up to another field, and 200 came in there and landed. So as New Mexico diminished, I transitioned, and I've been flying. Well, this one particular ranch that I'm flying now, I've been there 23 years. But I didn't go hawking last year because of COVID. And there's three landowners there. Two of them are brothers and their wives, and then a separate couple. And two of those three couples contracted COVID. So I felt it inappropriate to go up there and want to recreate and, when they're struggling and all. And I was just a little too paranoid. So last year I skipped any trip, and I'm going this year, and this will be my last year of grouse hawking. When I drive away, if I ever go back, it'll be to visit the people, maybe hunt deer or something. But it's 800 miles to the ranch, and I've got very bad ankles, knees, hips, elbows, and the drive just wears me down. Something terrible. There's times that in fact, a couple years ago, I drove home from Nebraska, straight run, 800 miles, and I pulled in my driveway at dawn, and I had to get my cell phone and call into the house and wake my wife up and have her come out and help me come in the house. I was so stove up, so crippled. I've had knee surgery, ankle surgery, and anyway, so 50 years is enough.
So are you going to call it good then, like period, or just for?
Yeah, I'm not going to. There's a big difference between if you've hawked grouse and been in that environment and experienced that kind of flight and that landscape and that. Up in Nebraska they call them sandhillers. It's the sandhills of Nebraska. If you've experienced that culture and the people, it's really hard to come back to Albuquerque and box up some pigeons and get on the interstate in traffic and drive to the edge of town and throw a pigeon when you've hawked grouse as many years as I have. It's time to step away. I want to do other things in my life with the time I've got left. And again, 50 years is enough.
Well, I mean, there's people that I'm sure that would agree. There's people that I'm sure that, they're just going to keep hobbling out there and, you get out there in canes, walkers, and wheelchairs if they have to, I'm sure. But,
Trust me, the thought has crossed my mind. But, if I could drive 30 minutes and hawk grouse or even ducks, I would continue. But again, to step down from what I did, the standard of falconry and caliber of falconry, and reduce it to reaching in a box and getting a pigeon on the edge of town, no thanks, I'm done.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've talked to other people that have similar sentiments. If it wasn't for, if they couldn't fly certain species or certain game or whatever, they would just hang it up because everything else just doesn't really do it for them.
It's called addiction.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I get it, that, and kudos to you for being able to realize that about yourself and know that, because, like I said, it's, we say it all the time. If you don't have the will and you don't, just have the, if the addiction wanes, so to speak, and you can't fly those birds as often as they need to be flown and on whatever corridor that you want to fly, then it's better probably just not to do it. So
I agree. Wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly.
Cool. Well, I mean, so when did you get involved with the association here, with the club, the state club?
It was kind of a real casual, low key kind of thing. Oh, I don't know how many years ago. And we have a falconer here. I think he's about my generation, my age, Matt Mitchell, and one or two other guys kind of really ramrodded it. And they'd make the calls to people or send out a mailing. We're gonna gather at so and so's house on so and so date. And it was real low key and easy going. And that was kind of the start of it. And in fact, I think Matt was the principal guy for the first 6 or 8 or 10 years. And now it's grown. There's new faces, but it's still pretty much the same thing. Gather up one Saturday a year, usually in the summer, a little picnic environment, and people bring some beers if they want, and talk about laws or this, and they have a raffle, and it's a low key, it's a nice thing.
Cool. Yeah, it's I don't know. I think every state could benefit from it if it's done right and ran well, and
Yes, it's real important, I think, to have a liaison with your game department. It shows them that you're organized, that you mean well, and if someone new is coming in, interested in falconry, or someone that's new and is kind of stumbling around in falconry like we all did, well, there's your opportunity to interact with more experienced falconers. Here's how your jesses should be. Here's how your perches should be. You can learn. Like I said earlier, my falconry was entirely trial and error when I started. I had no one to learn from. And now, geez, these new generation falconers, heck, they're flying these great birds and doing great things. But falconry has changed so much. I mean, telemetry. Now you can go find the bird and bring it home. You don't lose them. You can develop a bird instead of having one bad day. The bird goes over the hill and it's over with. Now you can go get her. You can correct it and plow through it, and end up with a good steady falcon, and all this other stuff. And when we started, you had to go trap your own bird, and you could only get this and you could only get that. Well, nowadays, you can pick up the phone and you can call somebody and go, I want a white gyrfalcon. Okay, you got it. Send me some money. Okay, you've got a white gyrfalcon now, which was unheard of before. And you can go to one of these sites, and you can order hoods. You can order your telemetry. You can order quail to feed your bird, perches. You can order you can get a bird dog. All in one day, you can get all of this stuff headed your way. Whereas with when I started, I made terrible hoods. I snipped my jesses out of apron split leather. I had lousy stuff because I didn't know any better.
Yeah, well, I mean, and as far as the telemetry and stuff, obviously the bird's still got to come back once you find it, but there's always that problem
yes,
too.
Always
but
that.
but no, I mean, you're right. I mean, things have changed a lot, but the fundamentals still, in a lot of ways, as weird as it sounds, even over thousands of years, have stayed the same.
Oh, absolutely.
But
absolutely. Your rapport with the bird, your initial handling of a wild bird, how you introduce them to the quarry, I could list 50 things that, and it's worldwide. The Arabs, European, it's all. I mean, there's some differences, but generally, it's all the same thing. What we go through, to get a good flying hawk or falcon and take care of it properly, no broken feathers and good manners. We all kind of do the same thing.
Yeah, like I said, the fundamentals for sure, and it's weird too because even from species to species, just the starting steps still are pretty much consistent. It's just that's where the fun quirks begin, though, is learning all the differences and kind of how to just handle the different species, and of course every bird then within each species is different too.
Yes, I've flown a lot of the too many. I've flown a lot of these Gyr peregrine tercels, and no two are alike. The way they're wired, their personality, their demeanor, their temperament, their metabolism, everything about them. There's a little variation. Whereas over the years I've trapped a lot of passage prairie falcons too, and I've had several tundra peregrines. Well, they all kind of fall in the same niche. They're very, very similar in how you handle them and the end result that you get. But boy, some of these hybrids, you sit there with it and you go, and I paid how much for this bird?
Well, that's why a lot of guys I know stick to passage birds and don't regret it a day of that decision, because if it doesn't work out, you can always just turn it back loose and you're none the worse.
Yeah.
But well, let's go ahead and share another one or two of your favorite stories real quick, and then I think we'll be about at the time to call this good. But it seemed like you had a lot of cool stories. So
well, I've been a game hawker, so you're out there on people's land, and daily I hawk 100 plus days a year. But down when I lived in Roswell, and I had that little Peel's Tiercel, that was such a dynamo. There was this one farm, a ranch that I used to pull into, and I had to pull up right by the ranch house, and they had a large screened-in porch, and I had to drive by it to go about another 50 yards, and then I could check 2 ponds that were right there. And this old gentleman, I remember his name, Mr. Graves. This old gentleman, very often in the afternoons, it was always the same time of day that I came, he would be sitting there in this. I could barely make out his silhouette behind the screen porch. And I'd see a hand come up, and he'd wave to me when I drove in, and I'd stick my arm out and wave to him. And it happened quite often. Well, one day I pulled in, and he was outside. He wasn't in the screen porch. And he walked with, he didn't have a walker. He used 2 canes, a cane in each hand. And so I pulled up and got out and said hello to him. And I said, well, you're right in a good position. You can watch the falcon fly. Because from in the porch, he couldn't see it. He could see me pull in and pull out, but he couldn't see the flight. But now he could see the flight. So I went and got ready and turned the bird loose. And there was all kinds of ducks on this pond, widgeons and gadwalls, and a whole bunch of divers. I think golden eyes and ringnecks and a bunch of those little crappy ducks. At any rate, the bird, he lined up on this, I can't remember if it was a golden eye or a ringneck, but some little tiny diver. And it flew right out over the driveway and came right up to this old gentleman that was still standing there. And I think the falcon might have tapped him, but he did a kamikaze into the ground. And the peregrine shot up and fluttered back down on him and had him right in front of this man, 6 feet from him. And I knew it was a lousy flight, that the bird, bailed out, the duck bailed, and, as compared to a good flight, had it been a widgeon or something, and it would have been an aerial kill. So anyway, I come trotting down off the dike, and I come across this little expanse there, and I come up to him, and I go something to the effect of, well, he got it, but it wasn't really much of a contest. That duck knew he was going to be killed. Knew the falcon was going to close up on him, and he kind of gave it up. And I was trying to explain to the man that it's not what we want. That the flight was poor, and the duck bailed out. And anyway, the old man says, "Yeah, he sure enough knew he was fixing to get an ass whooping put on him, didn't he?"
That's so funny.
That'll stay with me till I die.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like I said, that's one of the other rewarding things that happens from time to time when you have people that ask to join you in the field and seeing their reactions for the first time. And some are a lot more. Some are a lot more. I don't know, how do you put it? Excitable than others.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
But no, that's cool. Well, go ahead and throw one more story.
Oh gosh, another one. Oh,
well, let me ask you this: Is there a particular bird in your past that sticks out?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, talk a little bit about like one of the kills one of the catches with that bird.
It was a Deer Peregrine Tiercel, and I got it from Dave Jameson in Reno, Nevada. And well, when he came into me, was sent to me, some other guys had bought some birds, and we all kicked in a little money to pay for gas and a rental car. And so there's 3 or 4 tercel Gyr peregrines brought in on this cadge. And I had to drive up to Denver to get mine instead of go all the way to Reno. And there was a heat restriction on shipping, so we couldn't get the birds flown to us. And so that was the solution, was that these guys are going to drive, and they were going to drop off a bird here and drop off 2 birds in Colorado and then go on to where they lived. And anyway, I went there and I walked into this room, and here's 3 beautiful Gyr peregrine hybrids on a cadge there. And I walked up and I go, let me guess, the one in the middle's mine. And it was the smallest one, like not a runt, but here was these other 2 big barrel-chested birds, and here was this little one in the middle. And the band numbers had been issued and permits, so it's a done deal. And the guy says, yeah, that's yours. And oh, okay. Well, it turns out to be one of the best grouse hawks in history. His name was Oscar, and quite a few guys have seen him fly. And this bird would come out of the storm clouds and cut a prairie chicken stone dead out of the air 1/8 of a mile out. And you can't teach him that. I can't take credit that I had some mysterious exotic training technique that made him do that. He just did it. He did it from day one. He killed the first sage grouse he ever saw, 5.5 pounds from completely out of sight. We couldn't see him. And he cut him out of the air, blew a hole in him the size of a silver dollar. And you can't teach a bird to do that. They just got to want to do it. And anyway, Oscar was the bird of a lifetime. He killed prairie chickens and sharptails for 20 seasons. He's at home now, retired. He's 23 years old. And
Man.
it breaks my heart every day when he flies up to the bars to get his food, and I see those little wings of his flutter, and I go, man, but it's just not worth it to me to risk him hitting a fence or getting killed by a wild prairie just for him to kill a couple more grouse. So after 20 seasons and his last grouse he killed, I took him home and called it good. But Oscar was good he's the kind of bird that you unhooded a big flock of grouse in the evening, and he would go up right at the edge of sight. I don't know, that's 1,500 or 1,800 feet. I don't know how high that is. And we'd get a flush, and he would put one down. Maybe it went in, he couldn't find it, and he would ring up again that high, and I would get a second flush, and at times I've gotten a third. And again, when you get a bird like that, it's a gift. You're blessed. It'll never happen again. I mean, I have one now. I'm just starting him out, and I have I trapped an anotum last summer off a cliff, and she's just about molted out. So I'll have a second-year peregrine, and I'll have a fresh new Gyr peregrine tercel to go to Nebraska with in November. But Oscar, he was the bird of a lifetime.
So that doesn't affect your decision at all, knowing that you're getting ready to officially hang it up for good, not to just go ahead and just pull him out of the mew real quick for one last go around? Or
it's crossed my mind. It has crossed my mind, but he's such a butthead about being hooded, and I've got the other 2 birds to handle. And the last time I was up there, the last grouse flight up there, I kind of promised him that was it, but done.
20 years, you're right. That is a extremely rare.
And the first time I ever saw a greater prairie chicken flush off was the first year I had the tundra peregrine. We went to Oklahoma, and there's a couple of counties up there near the Kansas border that have them. And when I saw this little group of prairie chickens flush off and fly off into that haze, I knew right then that none of our birds were going to kill one of them. And but it kind of threw down the gauntlet. I just decided right then and there that that's what I'm going to do. I hadn't killed a duck yet, but when I saw those, I'd seen some duck kills by falcons, but when I saw those things fly off, in fact, for the rest of that short trip, we were driving through these little communities. I kept looking out the car window, going, how can I get a job here? Where can I live? I wanted to. I knew and it took me 4 years to ever kill one.
Man.
You know, I had to wait that long, and then when the deer peregrine tercels came along, again, they're the perfect match for the prairie grouse, and I've killed quite a few with the deer peregrine tercels.
Well, that's great. I'm glad that you've had sounds like an amazing 20 years with the same bird. I can't think of hardly anyone that can say that.
It's phenomenal. It was like every time at dark, I always flew the evening birds. Prairie chickens come in mornings. They come in the evenings to the crops. That's how I flew them. Every time I unhooded that bird, I thought that was gonna be it. I was gonna never see him again. But I always took him home at night.
Man, that's, like I said, even getting a few seasons out of a bird is fortunate. And, you know, I have friends that have flown the same, you know, birds, or the goshawk or whatever species over 7 or 8 years, and just recently lost, you know, those birds. And I can only imagine what, you know, I mean, the fact that you still have him and he's still hanging out, you know, it's
still ornery.
Wow.
Still won't let me pick him up.
Man. Well, yeah, he's earned it. It sounds like.
Absolutely,
so.
Absolutely. He's bird of a lifetime.
All right. Well, I think on that note, that's probably the perfect note to end on. But you know, thank you so much for making the drive up and doing this.
Happy to.
Yeah. And is there anything in passing or in parting that you you know, want to send out as a message to all the new generation, or?
New guys, you know, if you're going to learn or improve, you need to hang around somebody that's better than you are. And, you know, that's what I did. And I've been around people, and I see that, well, you know, his gear, his stuff is better than mine, and his bird is tamer than mine, and his bird is handling. Kind of set your sights on, you know, pick out a mentor, and doesn't hurt to copy. That's how you learn. That's how I learned.
Yeah, that's good advice. Good advice. Well, thank you again, and hopefully we'll cross paths again sometime in the near future. And, you know, like I said, thanks again.
You're most welcome.
All right. Talk soon.